God, I hate this stupid cliche. You know when the two main characters are forced to hate each other over a contrived misunderstanding? I'm sorry, One True King Sigil. I'm sorry, Phelan Sigil. I'm sorry, Arcane Strike. I never should have doubted you. What you enable is one of the most fun builds I've ever concocted. And that build is, name pending, registered trademark. Before I get into any of what we're using, I just want to demonstrate what this build does. This is a rotation build that leverages a few of the new toys we got in this DLC to achieve some big numbers and teleport around infinitely. The rotation is as follows. Ouroboros, Wormhole, Spear Chuck, repeat infinitely. There's a lot of moving parts to this, so let's start from the top. Archetypes. We have Invader and Archon. Invader is mandatory, since Wormhole is what we're using to achieve our damage. Archon is maybe the flexible spot. We'll put a pin in that. Jewelry. We've got One True King Sigil, Stargazer, Rebel, Phelan Sigil, Probability Cord. Our relic is Profane Heart. We've got melee crit damage, and skill cooldown. Among these, the only flexible spots are the melee damage on our fragment and maybe probability cord. Everything else is mandatory for the build to function, and I'll get into why in a minute. Our primary is Deceit with the Spellweaver Mutator. This is non-negotiable. Our melee weapon is the Huntress Spear, and again, Opportunist is non-negotiable because that's where we're getting all of our damage from, thanks to Wormhole now triggering perfect dodge events. This means that every time we throw our spear with the Wormhole buff, it's gonna crit. You could swap the Huntress Spear for the Krell Axe or some other melee weapon with a ranged option, but Huntress Spear is the clear standout, both due to its high base damage, high weak spot damage, and inbuilt corrosive damage boosting our numbers. Our secondary can be whatever you want it to be, with whatever you want on it. I recommend either Tremor or Song of Ifir to help manage the ads during boss fights, since this is a very much a single target kind of build that can get tunnel vision if you're not too careful. You could also go for the Corrupted Rune Pistol for more damage. The only gun that I'm going to recommend against using is Nebula. I know, a build where Nebula doesn't help. I'll go a step further. Nebula actually hurts our build, because Nanoswarm, for some reason, can consume the damage boost from Wormhole and prevent you from using it through your spear. And the corrosive damage from it is rendered obsolete by the spear's corrosive passive. So Nebula is actually a really bad option for this build. For traits, there are a number of things that we need, those being Spirit, Expertise, Arcane Strike, Siphoner, Leech, Chakra, Amplitude. I guess, no, Chakra and Amplitude are more quality of life. They just boost our Tremor and our Song. Vigor and Strongback are really kind of whatever. We have absolutely zero damage reduction in this build, so expect to get one-shot by the boss in most circumstances. I've just got points in Strongback so that I can still light roll with this fashion, but you can do whatever you want with it, like Fitness or Swiftness. Siphoner and Leech are here to keep us topped off through the Stargazer drain, because even though we're incredibly fragile, staying full on health will make sure you don't die to the occasional ad or stage hazard. A direction you could take with these is to drop Chakra and Amplitude if you don't care about Tremor or Song, and put those points into Fortify and Barkskin while bumping your armor up to a medium load, which would let you survive at least one hit from most things, as opposed to what I have here, which is basically, it obliges you to never get hit. Basically, you'll be a lot tougher, but you'll have a harder time with ads, so pick your flavor. Okay, explanation time. What the hell are we doing with all of this skill cooldown and mod generation? I have spent days experimenting with the Huntress Spear and Wormhole to try and figure out a way to get a rotation that doesn't go net negative on either the mod or the skill, and with this we have exactly enough to maintain it. We need enough mod generation so that whenever we hit somebody with a Wormhole boosted crit spear, it regenerates Ouroboros from empty to full. We get that from Power Creep, Spirit, Arcane Strike, and Phelan Sigil boosted by the One True King amulet, all working together. We need enough skill cooldown so that whenever we activate Ouroboros, it replenishes our Wormhole without any loss that would eventually mean we can't use the skill when we need to, thanks to Spellweaver. We get that from Expertise, Stargazer, Rebel, this Relic Fragment, and the Xenoplasm Concoction. I must stress, do not forget your Xenoplasm Concoction or this build doesn't work. Most importantly, we use the Spellweaver Mutator, which gives us a cute little 13% cooldown reduction whenever we use it. All of these combined create a back and forth between the mod and the spear that we can loop forever. Any less of either in this build, and we can't do that. So for example, if I drop even this little bit of cooldown reduction on the relic and try to do the loop, in a few uses you can see we're already trending towards hitting 0. Yep, I can't use it anymore. So I've run dry. Any less mod generation, and it's the same story. But the thing with that is that, with what I have here, it's kind of overkill, in a way. So if I start the rotation, and I get a headshot, it instantly replenishes our Ouroboros, no problem. But here's the thing with the spear. It's not hit scan, and my aim is trash, so we can't always count on getting a headshot. And you'll notice that if I re-equip this skill cooldown and drop the amulet real quick, if I have any less mod generation and I don't get a headshot, it will not fully replenish the mod. So I went the extra mile during jewelry selection to ensure that this loop works even against bosses that have hard to hit or inaccessible weak spots, which is why we have exactly the amount of mod generation that we have through the Phelan Sigil plus Arcane Strike. If you think you can hit weak spots all the time, then you don't need nearly as much mod generation, and those slots can go towards more damage. But I like this because it matches up better against bosses with awkward weak spots. The only thing you do need to make sure of is that you hit something, because if you miss, it does get a little awkward. Thankfully, Wormhole has 2 charges, and because our rotation is so robust, if you completely whiff one of your spear throws, let's say you're fighting Ravager and he sidesteps your throw, with your other Wormhole charge, if you get a weak spot hit, you get your mod back, which you can then use to get your Wormhole back and restart the loop. The only way you're left vulnerable in this build is if you miss continuously and are left without your mod or your Wormhole, and then you have to wait. Really, that's the gist of the build. Some of you may be wondering why we aren't using Invoker if this is a skill-focused build. And, well, you definitely can. In fact, if you have Invoker as your primary and Invader as your secondary, we don't need nearly as much cooldown reduction elsewhere, which can free up your Relic Fragment or your Concoction slot. But I ultimately decided against that direction for 2 reasons. Those freed up slots that we gain can't go toward having more damage, sadly, because we would need to spend those slots shoring up the mod generation that we lose from not having Archon. And Invoker doesn't contribute anything to our damage since we are dealing neither elemental nor skill damage. And our primary damage sources are melee and mod. So to sum it up, the Invoker plus Invader setup can be equally, if not more, consistent, but it wouldn't deal as much damage. And if it were just that, I could consider it a viable alternative to this, if not for reason number 2. And that is that having Invader as your primary gives you access to decoys, which are invaluable to our playstyle. The Spear Throw is a very slow animation lock, but the attack speed, Relic Fragment, and Brawler's Pride don't make enough of a difference to justify the opportunity cost. So throwing our spear is actually really dangerous. The targeting of Wormhole is very fickle, and you can't always count on it putting you somewhere safe or away from the boss. So having a decoy to distract the boss and the adds lets us throw the spear safely while getting a little bit of a damage bump on top of that. So we've got spear damage from Invader, Ouroboros damage from Archon, all damage from Chaos Gate, and decoys, which not only give us much needed survivability, but also even more damage. Speaking of damage, I know I already touched on this a little bit earlier, but basically it all comes down to stacking multipliers. Wormhole boost on top of the guaranteed crit from Opportunist is the foundation of the build, and we boost that through our Relic Fragments, through Probability Chord, Chaos Gate, our passives, but we're also spamming Ouroboros, which is both a mod and melee damage, so the way we're scaling that is through passives from both of our archetypes, Chaos Gate, One True King Sigil, the melee fragments, and remember, Opportunist doesn't just say that the spear gets 100% crit chance, it just boosts our melee crit chance in general, and that means Ouroboros is benefiting from it as well. But since Ouroboros lags behind the spear a little bit, if the boss is really far away, the duration might run out before it reaches them, and then Ouroboros won't crit. You can alleviate this if you backstep after throwing the spear, which will refresh the duration. I typically did not have the presence of mind to do this in the fights, but that is how you can ensure that you're getting your crit. I hope and pray to whatever gods or video game developers that are listening that when you inevitably bring down the hammer on Ring of Spears, that you leave Ouroboros intact. The fact that this counts as melee damage is the only reason this build even works. But if one day Ouroboros gets doinked on and this interaction no longer works, some alternatives that you can swap to are Sandstorm, Big Bang, maybe Supernova. You'll probably just need to fit Kinship somewhere in your build and swap Probability Chord for more skill cooldown. Okay, if I forgot anything, I'll probably leave it in a pinned comment below. Onward to the showcase. This build was so much fun to use. Do not subscribe to me. I am not a content creator.